thank you everyone for joining us today for this session, Understanding ISO 55013, Guidance on Management of Data Assets. We have Shiv Iyer here today to talk through this. We will be taking questions at the end of the session. We are using Slido for this, so if you go to slido.com, I'm going to put the number in the chat, and you can access that and you can add questions as we go along. And if you see other questions on there, or there are questions that you thought you might have wanted to ask, you can also vote the questions up so we can have the most popular ones answered first. Any questions that we don't manage to answer during the session, we will be able to take offline and have answered after the session and put into the eventual knowledge article that will have the video recording and the sessions there. So if you're ready to share your slides, Shiv, then we can proceed.
Yep, Rob, can you give me permission to share?
Oh, of course. That would help, wouldn't it?
Is my screen visible now?
Yes, all good to go.
Oh, good to go. All right. Well, good day, everyone who has logged in from different parts of the world. We're going to be talking about ISO 55013 today. But before we jump into our main topic of the session, I'd like to do a quick safety value integrity moment, which is what I do with every presentation talk that I give. Um, so today I'm going to talk about blue light. It's going to be a health moment. As you all know, as we move into the digital age, we are bathing in blue light, and that is causing severe chronic diseases in this human machine. We have adapted to be awake with the rising of the sun and fall asleep with a few hours after the sunset. But this practice that our machine has a body, our human body and machine has adapted over hundreds and thousands of years has been abruptly disrupted in the last, I would say, half a century with the advent of modern electronics and our transition into the digital age is causing a lot of disruption in the way the body functions. So the key hormone here is melatonin. That's what puts you to sleep when the sun goes down and then wakes you up in the morning when the sun is getting ready to come up. Uh, Now, what disrupts that secretion of the melatonin is the constant beaming of blue light that comes from the electronic devices that we keep staring at 16 to 18 hours a day. And what we have right 3 centimeters behind our retina is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. That is our body's internal clock that tells the liver, heart, and kidneys to start cooling down and go into self-clean mode. And then when the sun rises, it tells it to start getting ready for working hard during the daytime. So the extra beaming of blue light is causing a lot of health problems. So what's the biohack for that? Simple, reduce exposure to devices at least 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. And one of the most important biohacks you could do is to block 100% of the blue light from these devices while you're working during the day. Where 100% blue light blocker glasses like the ones that I'm wearing. Whenever you're in front of a screen, whenever you're behind, inside the house, behind glass, because glass blocks most of the wavelengths of the light and lets mainly blue light come into the house. So, be aware of that. Don't over LED and don't over, illuminate the home, and some of these few things that please keep in mind. If you're interested in this topic more, go and type in Dr. Jack Cruz, who's a neurosurgeon, in your preferred search engines. There's a link to a YouTube video, so you can learn more about blue light and how it could help you become more healthy. All right, enough of the health moment. Let's get right into the main topic. Technical Committee 251 is one of the 800 technical committees and subcommittees that the International Standards Organization operates through in producing global standards that agencies all over the world refer and use in their day-to-day business in trying to comply and produce a good service that they're in the business of. So how the international standards are produced are through these technical committees and subcommittees. So TC251 is the technical committee set up specifically to look into asset management. So our we have Louis Appleyard as the committee manager. You have a chairman's advisory group, and TC 251 is sponsored and managed by the British Standards Institute. So most of the staff, especially the chair and the committee manager, comes from BSI. Now, the TC251 itself produces standards, works on topics of interest through what they call as working groups. So as you can see, various working groups have been set up to work on very specific documents. WG4 was tasked with 55,000 revision. WG6 was tasked with 55.1 revision, and 8, 7, 8, and 9 were tasked with producing brand new technical specification, or sorry, I should say guidance documents. We are going to be talking about the work of work group 9, that is data valuation. I am the deputy convener, or I was the deputy convener until the last chairman's advisory group meeting that produced the standard with my counterpart from China, Dr. Yang, who was the convener. So here are the movers and shakers in the ISO TC 251. I'd like to thank Charles Corey, the previous secretary, as well as Reese Davis, the past chair of the ISO Technical Committee 251, under whose aegis we started this work of producing 55,013. The current chair and secretary helped us get through the finish line, Tom Goodyear and Louis. Their effort was instrumental in the standard finally seeing the light of the day. Here are my colleagues from different working groups that we all collaborated, although most of the work was done in work group 9 for this standard. We still have to maintain alignment with other standards that are already in existence and the ones that are being developed, so that what we provide as statements within the clauses do not conflict the existing standards. So we were a very close-knit group, talking and collaborating all the time as we moved the draft of the standard through various stages. And not to mention the least, the 50 work group 9 experts from over 13 countries who participated in hundreds of meetings across 3 years, donating 1,000 plus hours. Our group of experts that directly contributed to 55,013 numbered sometimes close to 100 people who had registered. And it ebbed and flowed over the 3 years, but we had a core group of 15 four experts from around the world that made active contributions into this standard. And the work group 9, ISO Technical Committee 251, and I personally am immensely thankful to them for this Herculean effort. The 55013 pay also has its own home on the TC251 portal. If you go to this website here in the bottom, you should be able to see all our ongoing and published work by this committee. And when you come to 55013, we have a nice page laid out there explaining the genesis of the standard, why did it come into existence, and what is the standard aiming to achieve. And then you would also find a short video from me um, introducing the standard when it was in the mid stages of completion. I think this was shot in Philadelphia last year as we were getting ready to finish. And this was my 5 minutes of fame on YouTube. And I thought I had gone viral, and only to find out that the only clicks were from my friends and family and my colleagues in the TC251. So much for being an influencer. Code of conduct. Here's the code of conduct that we always follow with every ISO meeting. And since this is a webinar that is discussing ISO standards, so it is only appropriate that I bring that up. And all the work that is done by ISO committees have to strictly adhere to these general principles. A little bit about the project timeline. As you can see here, this was a 36-month project. From beginning to completion, we were finally given the green light in May of 2021 to begin work on this standard, which is a extension of an ad hoc group that was formed in a year before 2021 May, to study information and data and the role of information and data in decision making. So I was the convener for that group, and we submitted our report. And when we finished that report, at the same time, there was a new work item proposal from the Chinese National Standards Body that put forward the proposal to develop a standard focusing on data and how data can be elevated and treated as an asset within the context of asset management. So there was perfect timing where we did a little bit of a reconnaissance research study on the role of data and information in decision making based on interests that were expressed in the global community of practitioners. We finished that, and a new work item proposal came in asking for ISO to Technical Committee 251 to consider writing a guidance standard. And 3 years hence, here we are with a published standard that was finally released on the ISO website in July this year. So we hope that this standard is as popular as the 55001 and will have a good uptake. So if you haven't already, acquired a copy of the standard, please visit the ISO store. You can grab one pronto, either in crisp paper or, if you prefer, digital copy for 129 Swiss francs, which is $152, 36 euros, 136 euros, or 114 British pounds. And we must acknowledge the gorilla in the room. 55001 is the crown jewel of the TC251, and we all pay homage and stand court in service of 55001. So this is the part where I have to kiss the ring and mention that 55013 exists solely in the service of 55001. Clause 7.6, which specifies that an organization shall determine the information requirements needed to support AM and develop a plan for the collection, integration, quality improvement, and sharing of data and information. This is the clause in the recently released 55001, and also has a note in 55001 that mentions that for further guidance on data to support an organization in how they can meet their asset management objectives, please refer to ISO TS Technical Specification 55013, which is our standard. So there's our hook into 55001, and then the link back from 55001 into 55013. So what is 55013 and why does it exist? It aims to help organizations better manage their data assets in the field of data asset management. It also provides guidance to ensure that data management and data asset management meet the organization's goals and stakeholders' expected requirements. It can be applied to all organizations regardless of their size, nature, type, or industry. And more importantly, it provides implementation advice for data asset management, including frameworks, plans, controls, and best practice. Again, this is a guidance document, so it does not get into the nitty-gritty details of how, but the why, and to some extent the what. So I'd like to spend some time, touching on three concepts: data management, data governance, and data asset management. Data management is data centric and is focused on technical data management, like understanding the system of records, managing master data, metadata, etc., so that the data is better able to support the business. The data governance is more business centric, being the process of controlling data processes to make data more usable and compliant with legislation and best practice. And finally, data asset management is value centric, focused on organizing collections of data assets to create more value for the stakeholders that the organization serves. I'd like to use an analogy to explain all these three concepts and tie it together. And I must give credit for this analogy to a firm called Anmut in the UK. And I like the way they presented these three topics in a blog post. So all credit to Anmut. Think of yourself as going on a journey. You're trying to make a journey. Let's say you want to go see the Taylor Swift concert, and you need to get there. So, and you need to use a car to get there, right? An automobile. Data management would be like asking more focused questions on the car. Is the fuel tank filled? Are the tires pumped up? Do they have the correct air pressure? Are the brakes responsive? Is the transmission in good working order? Is the AC working? Are the safety cameras that that if it was a Tesla, you'd be thinking about the 7 cameras that keep you safe in that car, that are constantly ingesting images of your surrounding. So that would be data management. And then data governance is like checking how well you as a driver can handle your car. Do you have the requisite training? Um, do you know how to operate the car? And if you are someone that has near vision like me, do you have the appropriate spectacles or prescription glasses in order to be able to see clearly? Do you have all the manuals handy in case if there were an incident on the road? And then data asset management, the big one, is focused more on the point of the journey and arriving safe and ready to participate in that, where context is more important. Why are you undertaking the journey? What is the outcome that you expect by taking the journey? What benefits do you intend to to realize? It could be, well, I can check box that I went to a Taylor Swift concert, for example, right? And also whether it is going to be going to the concert using the car and just driving half an hour or a couple of hours, or getting on a plane and crossing continents to see the concert because it's cheaper in Europe to buy the ticket than it is in the US. I'm just giving you examples. So in a sense, data asset management is value centric. You're trying to determine what's the value that we expect from our data. What are the outcomes we expect from our data that we own as an organization? Data governance is business centric. It focuses on the various aspects of, do we have the right governance structure, oversight, do we have the right value systems in order to be, or the right principles of how we would manage our data. And data management itself is more tactical. It's more focused on, where the data is stored, how are we acquiring the data, how are we going to, maintain the data and ultimately dispose of it. And as you can see from the schematic here, that there are various touch points, and data as a topic has been adequately treated in ISO 8000 and 19650. So we have made careful considerations not to repeat what has already been addressed in these standards. So how is the 55,013 organized? It is organized, I would like to view this as into four major buckets. The first bucket is all formalities. It has the scope of the standard, the normative references, terms and definitions. Definitions are important. We need to know the terms of reference and what they mean before jumping into the more technical details of the clause. So the first three set the base foundation. The next two buckets, one addresses asset data, the other addresses data assets. And then finally, the fourth bucket, we talk about data governance to wrap this up nicely. So in the next few slides, I will briefly touch on each of those clauses. There are 8 clauses in total, and we will not spend any detail. We won't get into the details of each and every clause, but I'd like to hit some very high points on each of the clause, and then we can probably take questions. So the first one is scope. What is the scope of the standard? The scope of the standard is that it provides guidance on managing data assets to help organizations effectively manage their data in the asset management system and deliver asset management objectives. A key aspect is we clarify is it does not provide a specific methodology to value data assets, because we did get a lot of questions early on is how do we value data in an organization. And as we all agreed after numerous conversations and debates, that value is something that an organization has to determine on its own, because it is subjective to the operating context, environmental context, the legal context of in which an organization operates. So that is not something that we as an ISO can offer up on how to value, or a methodology to value data. The next is normative references. Of course, as I said, the normative references, which means all the definitions, principles of terms, do come from ISO 55000. And this year, we also had an updated version of ISO 55000 along with 55001. So our 55000 2024 will be the normative reference for this. And then the most important is terms and definitions. So here's where we introduce definitions that were not included in the previous standards. Wherever they were included, we refer them directly to those standards instead of repeating them in the terms and definition clause. So I'll touch on two most important definitions for this standard. Asset data simply means the data that lists and describes an asset. And data asset is all data that has properties of an asset. So clause number 4 is about managing asset data. The processes and methods of managing asset data are introduced here, including various stages of the data life cycles and aspects such as data definition of the asset, collection, storage, reporting, decision making, distribution, and disposal. Data management, sorry, data management is the responsibility of the organization and requires the establishment of an asset management system to ensure that data quality and security is maintained. A complete data lifecycle guides the adoption of corresponding management measures at different stages of data. Now, the data is essential in decision making, and a feedback loop can continuously improve data and decisions. Data distribution and disposal require consideration of data security and compliance. Now you can see here that I've highlighted some standards in red. What we do here is we do point to ISO 8061, for example, where we talk about processes of management. How do you manage asset data? Now, because data management processes are very clearly described in 8061, we do not repeat this here. We just point the reader to go to ISO 8061 to specifically refer to what processes they should follow for managing asset data. Similarly, for any specific data requirements, we refer them to the ISO 8000 series. Likewise, for the data lifecycle stages, there are very specific guidance in 27040 related to storing of the asset data. What are the devices you would use, and how do you archive data? So those guidances can be accessed in 27040. Next, clause 5 is about how do you deliver value from asset data. Asset data is critical for physical assets management and decision making throughout the asset life cycle. Improved data quality enables better decisions, including whole of life planning, reliability analysis, risk analysis, work management optimization, demand analysis, and sustainability assessment. So here we talk about the fact that asset data is crucial for supporting organizational objectives, because anytime you're trying to get outcomes and decisions, they need to be based on data. Data-driven decision making is a very popular term that we throw around in asset management, and we'd like organizations to push towards using more and more data in order to make informed decisions. Data management and governance processes can also improve the usefulness of asset data. And then adopting industry standards for data can contribute to the improvement of the asset data's usefulness in the support of asset management objectives. So that's how we communicate and we talk about delivering value from asset data. Then we slowly graduate towards data assets. And when we talk about data assets, I think I mentioned that A data asset is a collection of data that has characteristics of an asset in an organization, and managing these assets or these data assets is critical to support their AM goals or the achievement of their AM goals. Um, and a data asset could include multiple data sets that form a group as a whole, and they are used to effectively support asset management objectives. Or it could be just a standalone data set itself that is so valuable to an organization that it needs to be managed as an asset itself. That could include, risk data, uh, and it could include customer data. It could include sales data for an organization. And what are the key considerations for recognizing asset data? High value, high risk assets need to be managed on an ongoing basis. Their associated data sets should be managed as data assets. Um, Multiple storage platforms are issues that need to be considered. Um, you know, Difference between technologies and asset life cycles. Um, Data acquired from external sources like organizations that invest in purchasing traffic patterns through a certain re, uh, section of their cities, weather patterns in order to be able to predict certain failures, failure data like reliability centered maintenance, failure mode data, which is commercially available for by equipment type. So these are types of data that they may be externally purchasing that could become a data asset because they play a critical role in helping the organization improve its prediction um, qualities and prediction abilities to forecast their performance on a long term. And the next is about managing data assets, clause number 7. And here we talk about effective management of data assets, supports the achievement of asset management objectives, and plays a crucial role in achieving the organizational goals. And adequately you need to adequately plan and forecast future demands and expectations. It helps in selecting effective strategies and set suitable objectives. It helps in making accurate decisions, provides helps you develop realistic and executable plans, gains visibility into the behaviors and cultures of the organization towards data, and it helps interoperability of the data set, that is the data being used across multiple organizations, or I should say multiple organizations externally as well as internally between divisions, where you need to pay attention to consistency, formats, data semantics, and digital preservation. I mean, how do you preserve your data for the long term? Because usually, the data tends, the assets, or rather the data life cycle is usually longer than the asset life cycle in most cases. It also helps with putting a data asset management plan in place. As we know that we're talking about data as an asset. Now you have the principles of asset management, and ISO 55001 can be applied to the data once it is treated as an asset, which means you could have a SAMP and an AMP that focuses primarily on data, and that's what we make the recommendation in the standard, that an organization develops a SAMP and an AMP focused on data as part of the overall asset management system. And finally, clause number 8 is about data governance. The purpose of governance is to ensure suitable oversight of asset data and related activities to meet the organizational objectives and respond to changing needs. Um, Approaches to governance often follow the EDM model, the evaluate, direct, monitor. which includes three aspects: evaluation of the data, the direction of what data needs to be collected, and where is it going to support information and decision making, and then monitoring of the data processes. Um, Governance can also be considered from a asset management or data governance perspective, and suitable approach uh, can be developed based on the specific context and the organization's management objective. From a principles perspective, we focus on transparency, accountability, compliance to laws and regulations, and we suggest a governance structure consisting of the data management office, a governance committee, and identification of data owners and stewards. And then the standard finally provides a couple of annexes, showing what are the different data activities um, that an organization should be involved in and consider assessing the data, how the data will be assessed, how the data will be improved, basically from a quality perspective, how will it be stored. Consideration should be given to methods of storage, on-prem, cloud, the format of storage, how the data will be utilized, who's going to utilize it, which organization, how new data will come into the system, into the organization, and how how that information will be processed and assimilated into existing data. Ultimately, when the data has no immediate need in the decision making process, at what point will it be archived, and at what point a decision will be made to delete that data safely so that the reliance on that particular data set does not jeopardize the rest of the organization. And then examples of data assets: an asset register can be considered as a data asset. History regarding the asset performance can be considered a data asset. Market data, so there are companies, or rather there is an actually big data exchange in China that actively trades data sets, customer data, commodity data as an asset. So they have a very high frequency exchange in China that is going to be using this standard in order to be able to comply and bring some standardization on how they would classify something as a data asset, which can be traded in an open e-commerce platform. And then you have the customer data. Large retailers usually use cookies to record customer preferences and online data, which help them improve, advertising and targeting. And these data are commonly traded, bought and sold on the online marketplace. So these are examples of data assets. Again, although it does seem that this is written from a physical assets perspective, which is what our TC 251 standards primarily has been applied to, this is not limited to just focusing on physically intensive asset organizations. This is also being adopted and will be adopted by organizations that deal with digital data, purely are in the business of collecting data, and where the data is the primary asset. For example, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Um, when you create an account, and when you are tweeting, when you are interacting with these social media websites, you are the product, and the data about you, your activity, your clicks, the sites you visit is the asset of most value to these organizations. And this standard would help those organizations bring some standardization into their valuation, into their data management and data asset management practices. So with that, I would I would like to wrap this webinar up. And a couple of things. You can find me on LinkedIn. Here's my contact information. And I want to take this moment to acknowledge my employer, Atkins Realis, for having unconditionally supported me throughout these years as I got involved in ISO Technical Committee 251, and finally as a deputy convener of Work Group 9, spent enormous amount of time uh, with the Work Group 9 developing the standard and seeing it through. Wouldn't have been possible without the support of my employer, Atkins Realis, as well as my involvement with IAM for several years now, going on almost 7, 8 years, has also been supported by Atkins Realis. So again, I want to thank my employer for supporting my um, participation in ISO and um, IAM. And I want to shamelessly plug the IAM conference happening in North America next month in Denver, Colorado. I am the co-chair of the conference. This is my third time chairing the conference and the final time. I think I'm going to retire officially from being the chair of this conference. But I'd encourage all of you to please, if you haven't looked at the conference program and made your decision to come, please do come. Denver is a great place to be in the Rocky Mountains, and we have a cracker of a conference planned. This is the 30th year of IAM, and it's a very special year for asset management. 6 standards have been released in the ISO Technical Committee 251 world. We have 6 AM standards. We have the AM landscape that was just updated. The AM anatomy, IAM anatomy document just got updated. So lots of things happening, lots of celebrations. We're going to have a great meeting of the minds in Denver. So please, if you haven't booked your slot already, go over to the website, IAM website, look for the IAM North American Conference event, and hit register. With that, I would entertain comments, thoughts, any wisecracks. By the way, these are our core team, few of our core team members from the ISO Technical Committee that put a lot of blood and sweat into the document. So again, thanks again to all our WG9 members, especially the core committee. With that, I think I'll hand it back to Rob.
Okay, thank you very much, Shiv. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation and for basically filling in the gaps on that. We have got some questions that have come through. So if we can start off with those, how are we doing for time? We're doing quite well for time, so we should get through most of them. If anyone does have any questions that you haven't put through yet, you can use the QR code that is should be on your screen there. You can scan that and that'll take you straight through. You can type in your question. They will appear on the screen here, and then we can see
Okay,
Shiv's
so
response. Okay, so if I start off, I'll read them out and you give the response that you can. Okay.
sure.
So we'll start off. Someone's asked if we are an infrastructure-intensive organisation, should we have a separate data asset management strategy, or can we include it into the SAMP?
Yes, good question. Since again remember that the SAMP by definition is a document that explains your asset management strategy for all assets in your organization. The moment you have decided that you're going to elevate the status of your data sets to being an asset itself, so it automatically becomes an asset in your portfolio over and above your physical assets. So your SAMP for the organization should include um, the data asset management strategy as well in the SAMP. You don't need a separate uh, DSAMP, if you will. And we mentioned that in the standard as well. We said that data you should also focus on data and treat it as an asset, and hence your SAMP should speak to that. How would you manage your data as an asset?
Okay. The next question someone's raised, can you provide examples of asset data? They feel they might have missed it, but they said they've seen examples of data assets, but not for asset data.
Correct. So asset data, again, by definition, asset data is any information, a list of uh, data that describes the asset itself. So asset data would be anything like, for example, date of install or manufacturer information, the design life of the asset, the dimensions of the asset, uh, the expected failure criteria for the asset. Um, so these are all examples of asset data.
Okay,
Anything that describes the asset is can be considered as asset data.
thank you. Next question we've been asked is, well, sorry, you have been asked, is how does data asset management align with digital asset management? Are support for asset condition data, for example, digital twins data models considered?
Correct. Let me read that again. How does data asset management align with digital asset management? Are support for asset condition data considered? Well, data could be analog and could be digital, correct? So digital is just a subset of data. So data asset management applies to all types of data. But I understand that we are, you know, sprinting forward into a digital age where most of our data is going to be in the digital format. So the same principles that you apply, that we lay down in the standard talking about data asset management, should work for data asset for digital asset management. And we don't specifically target digital twins in particular because remember this is not a prescriptive standard. This is a guidance standard. But again, a digital twin is the reason why you go for a digital twin is because you want to take different data sets and create a digital replica of a asset in reality so that you can collect that data and run simulations and run prediction models to determine how that asset will perform by changing the environmental variables for that in the digital realm before you invest the strategy or invest in a strategy in the real world. So anything that we talk about data in the data asset management standard should apply carry over to the digital twin as well.
Thank you. Um, I can answer the next one quickly. Just for anyone that's wondering, the video recording of the session, and for those of you who had problems and weren't able to see the slide deck, once we've got agreed with Shiv, the final slide deck that will be included in the knowledge article. So the slide deck and the video presentation will both be there. They should be towards the back end of next week. They should be available online, and we will announce um, uh, when that happens. Okay. Now back onto the questions about asset management. Um, so the next one we've got is sensor data, also part of asset data. For example, vibration data to monitor health degradation of an asset.
Absolutely, 100%. Because again, remember that I'll draw your attention back to the definition of asset data. Any piece of fact that describes the asset is asset data, right? Um, and again, the definition of data is facts about an object, plain and simple. The definition of data again, facts about an object. Now, that object could be the asset. Now, asset data would be facts about the asset. And the vibration data coming in through an IoT sensor is constantly giving you some fact about that asset, that it is vibrating at a certain frequency. Thereby, the vibration data is an asset data, can be considered as an asset data. I hope that was clear.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, still doing all right for time, and we're still doing all right for questions as well. So, someone asked, today asset data and data assets are sometimes owned, managed by many entities, vendors, service providers, etc. How does the standard address such scenarios?
Today, asset data and data assets are sometimes owned, managed by many entities, vendors, service providers. How does the standard address such scenarios? No, it does not. Um, Again, as I said, we do not get into the specifics and the mechanics of specific cases where asset data and data assets are come from different sources, and how would you manage that? That would become something more of a process and practice management aspect of an organization. So that is not directly addressed specifically in the standard.
Okay. We've been asked, the term digital twin is widely used to describe a virtual mirror of a physical asset. Is this term recognized or defined within 55013?
To the best of my recollection, it is not defined in 55013.
Okay, fair enough. Um, we've also been asked, any distinction of applying the standard if one, we own physical assets to provide a service, or two, if we instead we own data to sell information?
No, we don't make any distinction
Okay, nice and easy.
because, and that's the whole data and data asset, both in the standard.
Okay. Let's see, with the rise of generative AI's influence on many industries, what are the thoughts of the ISO TC on Gen AI in asset management?
Interesting question.
Mm,
This is a topic that is gaining a lot of attention in the TC as part of our future forward initiatives. We are we have a team that is focusing on AI, digital, being the focus area to take the standards in a direction where a lot of the management practices, processes will be influenced and replaced in some instances with AI. So we right now we don't have any standards in the work, but it's coming. I mean, it's coming fast and furious. That we are starting to already put many working groups, ad hoc working groups together to start thinking about pro- putting something out, maybe a report, a white paper, or a guidance on generative AI and its impact on asset management.
okay, we've got a couple of shorter ones. Is data asset the analytical data generated from asset data?
Not necessarily. It could be, but not necessarily. I think you may be bordering on the lines of data and information. I think you take asset data and then you analyze the asset data, and that probably gets converted into information. Because I think we went through, quite lengths to define data and information in the ISO 55001 document. And as Martin couple of weeks ago had presented, there was a theme in ISO 55001, which was in data and information, led by Dr. Nabil Shetty. And he led the conversation around data, information, knowledge. And data being facts about an object is the information being meaningful facts about an object. And when you do analyze the asset data and you make it more meaningful, more insightful, then it gets converted into information. So in your question, you may be kind of bordering into the information realm when you apply analytics to your data.
Okay. Let's see one more. How to ensure and assess our data meet the requirement in data quality? Please give some example for asset register in electricity utility. That also links into the one next to it. Is there a standard template for the asset register?
Yes and no. There is no standard template for the asset register, but various industries and asset management textbooks have put out the principles of how you would develop an asset register with nine levels. I think if you just Google asset register fundamentals, you would see a diagram, a pyramid diagram pop up with nine levels of how you build your hierarchy. And that can be applied to any industry, any sector. So I would probably refer you all to just doing a general search on asset register. But every organization and every industry body has some principles or some specifications they add in terms of how you do develop an asset register. And by the way, 55,010, the standard on finance, um, has some reference to asset registers and how do they treat asset registers and what are the financial touch points for an asset register. So I'd also refer you to just take a quick read of 55,010.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes, and I think we can probably do two more. Rest assured, anybody that has asked a question that doesn't get answered on this session now, we will forward these on to Shiv to provide answers. And like I say, we'll put those into the overall knowledge item that has the video, the presentation, and any unanswered questions. So for our last two, we'll go with, will organizations eventually be able to apply for ISO 55013 accreditation?
Well, ISO 55013 is a guidance spec, and it is not a technical requirement like 55,001. You can only be accredited against 55,001. So all these other standards are more of a guidance document in the family of 55,000 standards. So to the best of my knowledge, I don't think you will be able to get accredited against 55,013. But it is possible that this will be taken by various national standards bodies and probably converted into a national standard against which they require organizations dealing with data to be certified. China is already starting to do that. They've already started taking 55,013 and doing education, training, and certification programs for companies in China.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll make this the last one. So why or when should an organization switch between managing asset data according to 5.5, 5.6 of ISO 55001 to managing data assets according to ISO 55001?
This is a good question. Why or when should an organization switch between managing asset data to managing data assets according to ISO 55001? So the way I would approach and answer this question is there was a white paper that was put out by the ISO Technical Committee 251, managing assets versus asset management, wherein they look at what is the state of thinking when you are just managing assets, and why would you go towards asset management. So managing assets is about narrow focus. It's about the now. It's about tactical. You're very much in a tactical mode. And asset management is you're taking a strategic view of the organization, a strategic view of your asset portfolio, and coming up with process, practice, people, data, technology strategies that are intricately linked with each other in service of delivering the strategic organizational goals and asset management goals. So that's the difference, right? Managing assets versus asset management. It is the same logic you can apply to asset data and data assets. When you talk about asset data, when you are working in a very tactical, siloed thinking, you're probably only focusing on what am I collecting data on, which assets, what am I doing with it, and you're just limited to that. You're not connecting all that into how is this data serving the larger organizational objective decisions. How does it feed into an information model or a decision making model? When you start going towards data asset management, you have elevated the status of that data to an asset, and now you're applying asset management thinking, a strategic asset management thinking to it, and saying, I'm not just going to look at this as a piece of information or a piece of data on the asset, but I'm going to treat the data as an asset itself. So I need to focus on strategically what objectives is it meeting for the organization, what decisions it is helping make, how is it delivering benefits, outcomes, and values. So that would be my way of justifying why would you move from a asset data mode of operation to a data asset mode of operation.
Fantastic. Very good question to end on. Um, so it just remains to say thank you very much, Shiv, for speaking today. Like I say, just as a reminder, the video, the presentation, and any remaining questions will appear in a knowledge article on the IM website over the next week. But again, thank you very much, Shiv. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Okay.